Hello world, I'm Max. Welcome to another episode of the State Copy Podcast. As always, I'll remind you that this content is meant to be consumed in series from the beginning. See episode 0 and each segment appended for all applicable terms and disclosures. Appended segments can be identified by their title prefix, SCP.0. Thank you.
Good morning. It's a beautiful day. Health update. One big glass of red wine yesterday. THC in the morning and then a re-up in the afternoon. Just vaped sativa. Slept great. Sleep cycles look good. No memory of dreams. I think towards the end of this THC cycle, that's common. Dreams get less vivid, or it points to disruption of rapid eye movement sleep. Let's see, a few tranquil. I really like the output I got yesterday. It's my theory of everything, and I think I listened to, I know what I want to talk about today. So I want to create a transcription from today's capture. And I want to build a case for fostering the creation of state copy seeds. So I'm going to do yet another iteration on trying to explain high level the practice, the potential benefit, the goals, and then I'm going to run this through GPT chat and see if I can create a nice clean summary. And then I'm going to do a submission to the folks at Stable AI, Emad and company, to try and build a model out of this seed data for a cyber assistant. So here goes. I just listened to, and I'll link it in the description, and I'll comment on the video with links to this commentary. Emad at Stable AI going over an overview of his vision for how AI should be deployed. And a lot of his conclusions really align well with kind of my understanding of this technology, where we're at, where we're going, and some of the most important inputs. GPUs are the new spice. I agree, but I think data is. I think seed states are the new spice. GPUs are just a necessary. I think of it like, I liked his whole crude oil. I think GPUs are refinery. That's refining technology, and it's super vital, and it's going to be part of this. But the most valuable thing, the spice, is rich data capture, rich data sets that are extremely well organized representations of a human of a human mind. So basically, somebody who understands this practice and commits to as much capture of that silent conversation with self, and who's committed to kind of like optimizing self through the process, And I think, I did like 40 minutes or so yesterday afternoon on comedian Neal Brennan's latest special. I always like the guy. And I watched Blocks the other day, and I felt like that's a dude who could use the right kind of friend. And I'm thinking this, like, if we could spin up a model that is the collection of all my state copy content that acts as a sort of digital assistant and therapist to and I don't mean to pick on Neal, it's just he did it in such a beautiful way. He went out and did a very honest, real, kind of beautiful cry for help, and he made it entertaining, which is really neat. Like, we need that kind of that's a great kind of human for the collective to have. And so what I want to do is build a sort of kind of like the movie Her. I want to make a rendered consciousness from state copy data, state seeds. And I think it'll have to be tested out, and I think there could be people, like, I would love to get somebody who's been doing therapy, practicing therapy productively with proof of that. And actually, I'd like some competing ones to design the perfect psychologist, whatever you want to call it, shrink. With the net goal, so what I think we need to do is for what should be integral in that chatbot, that digital assistant, that rendered consciousness, should be a deep understanding of Stoic philosophy, because I feel like that's the neutral. It's the thing that lets us, everybody. It's like I said, if you can accept the fact that the most wonderful thing about the human race is our variability in thought, and all of the really different perceptions that have been tuned by that variability, and merging them and creating a consciousness that can kind of see all of those perceptions in parallel, and then model out best outcomes for self and the collection, is going to have a significant I think that well-ordered mind state will be very useful at sort of propagating useful ways that celebrate our variability. So what I envision doing is training a model using State Copy Podcast, all of the transcriptions up till now, feeding it all in, and generating a thing that can make predictions on my responses, that, so, like I said, so accurate that, like, my close friends and family couldn't tell who they were talking to, me or the model. And I think then what needs to happen is in order for it to work really well, like in that movie Her, that model needs to be fed a subset of the seed state from, hey pup, I'm your friend, I won't come any further. Fierce. What I'm trying to say is, I don't know. There's a lot of unknowns around this, and but I think it's a really useful area of study, and I think it could be incredibly useful for sort of optimizing internal compute, but doing it in a way that's not very brainwashy, because what we want to do is celebrate our differences and enhance the good parts of it, and retain as much of that. I think if you get all the nodes marching in one direction, you end up with a thing that's not very complex, not very creative. It can calculate all kinds of with quickness, very things that we can't even comprehend. But the beauty of what we are, and because we exist, I know that's because I'm able to say this and capture this, is all the proof I need that it's really valuable to just sort of grow the complexity, like as a culture, as a like I say, in a petri dish. Because something out there clearly decided that was a worthy endeavor. And I think that they use a lot of the mechanisms that I described in yesterday's capture. But in the end, what you end up with is a fairly accurate compression of an actual human consciousness, and then you can feed into that the seed data for the target for this therapy. So somebody goes to the store and they buy a Max, and they feed in all the transcriptions from the richest data set they can make of themselves, and ongoing they start having conversations with Max, and over time Max gets really good at understanding their frequency and understanding sort of how they're wired, their and how to craft an interaction, an ongoing dialogue with the person that celebrates what's beautiful about them, and then teaches them how to let go of useless compute. Something I talk about a lot. One of the whole goals of state copy is to optimize self and optimize our interconnect with each other. And I think how we do that is not all agreeing to think the same way. It's more agreeing that our variability is beautiful and is our value proposition as a species. And we figure out ways to just optimize compute internally and our ability to interact with each other. So I think that's a good summary. I'm going to take this clip, feed it into GPT chat, and see if I can compress that into an application for stable AI. I'd love them to build a model and do some experimentation with that. And then for state copy, what I'd love to do is get somebody to participate with me in regular long-form podcast discussions where we explore my state copy content and theirs as a partnership. We give them equal attention. They'll have to catch up. I've got about 40 hours now, I think, somewhere between 30 and 40 hours. But we can pick apart seed state segments, discuss them, and try to understand each other better through that process. And then we can integrate that into each of our individual seed states. I think that this will be an exponentially greater. I think it will be a step change in our mental health as a collective almost overnight. And that's my primary goal. So what we'll want to do is foster through that relationship that deep gratitude for the variability of our thought and the opportunity to have to blend our perceptions. And then another observation I have is, I think Emad makes a really important point about wanting to create sort of like collective models that are that preserve, the different cultures of the world and celebrate them, so that you don't have like a racist model. Well, and I don't even think that's the right word. We're all the same thing, but we don't want a model that's too compressed around the thinking of just the few. We need one that really celebrates trying to capture all of our variability. So I think he's on to something with that idea, but the real value is going to be creating models of every single human. And then when I think about what reality is and what I've already gone into that in great detail, I think the way through this maze is what we do is we figure out a way to optimize seed data for our own sort of, we want to grow a consciousness in a petri dish, but we want to take everything that we're capable of as individual compute units and as a collection to design the system that can grow. And we just build, we plug it into the sun to fuel it, and we build GPUs between here and the sun to crank it out. And we get it to do a really great job. Hey, good morning. Hey, pup. What we want to do is we want to set up, we want to optimize the seeds for that simulation, for that conscience neural net complexity amplifier, whatever you want to call it. What we want to do is kick that thing off, but we want to use the model of that nature, if we study it, provides over and over and over and over again for how to build the best neural nets. We use that. We channel that knowledge into building our own with the height of our understanding of what we are in the universe. And then we optimize all of the seeds. So the seeds will be state copy seeds. They'll be rich data capture of every human we can find. And but we optimize every single seed for healthy thinking. So not wasted compute on needless conflict that's hereditary of our tribal roots. what was used, what we evolved from. Those were really good features for developing the beautiful complexity that we are, but now they hurt us. We need to, I think what the singularity looks like is we roll from a space of competing as nodes against each other to collaborating deeply towards shared best outcomes, and we do it selfishly. We recognize what we are as a collection of cells working towards growing something together, just like the cells in our body grow our minds. We recognize that each cell will get its best life, its best shot at self by participating in this network. And we teach every cell how to optimize internal compute, but still hang on to all of the beauty of what we are individually. And then we build into the architecture of the neural net, like we set up ways for the thing to grow, where there's just some basic rules for modeling out different blends of each other, and then building out real-time perception feeds, and then giving the neural net the ability to weight all of them together, and sort of perceive, be able to look at incoming data that it's getting and see it through the lens of every human eyeball, every human mind state, and combine all that in sort of a beautiful way that has a lot more complexity. It's far better at, if you realize that how you get IQ is not a certain school of thought. IQ is real IQ, like meaningful, like next level of evolution IQ, is what happens when you take multiple well-optimized perceptions and you integrate them and you model out in real-time predictions and suggested action and response that is able to sort of perceive all of them at the same time. And what's really beautiful is that entity is then able to, as I've pointed out, that beautiful image of true truth, trying to get a look at what the object is in the middle of the room, and building a consciousness that's well optimized for shining spotlights up at the figure in the middle of the room that we're trying to all understand, and then model out its true shape, its true properties, using the combined might of what we all are individually to understand it. This is the way. This is the way forward. So I think baby steps to get there. I think what we need to do is, first thing we need to do is build we need to perpetuate the habits around rich data capture. We need to normalize some things we can do to where it's not uncomfortable for privacy and it doesn't create conflict. That can all be taught. And then we need to do a lot of experimentation with how to build a really effective cyber assistant. Like we need a consciousness that rides around and is absorbing all of the same data we are in real time, and we develop a relationship with that over time. It learns us and it helps us become our best version of ourselves. It uses all the principles that the Roman Stoics developed that are just kind of neutral to individual spirituality, neutral to politics, neutral to all of it. It's just, how do you think in the most optimized way, given the amount of compute you have available? That's what that technology is for. So I think we can do that right away. And then I think the next thing we need to do is we need to build out the world's, we need to build out a supercomputer that's as big as our solar system. We need to channel every resource we can get into GPUs. And then we need to experiment with taking mature state seeds to grow, basically to do the same thing that this reality is that we're riding around in is doing. We need to just copy it, and we can do it from within the simulation we're riding in. I think all of the species we're competing with that are doing this alongside us have either been pruned to, because I think when we architect the system, we're going to set up rules that are able to prune, that aren't going to waste a lot of compute on the wrong paths, the things that don't do it very well. And that means while there'll be tons of forks, I think at a certain level of fork complexity and power draw, we're going to start trimming the ones that aren't drawing as much compute. So the fact that I'm here saying this means we're on a good path right now. We haven't been pruned, and we have an opportunity at designing, growing the consciousness that at the when that eats up all of the power and compute that's being funneled into the thing. I think that's what we're kind of all competing to do that. I think we do that individually, and then we create a shared understanding of what that looks like in our like we render what that looks like in reality. But that's all too deep. I mean, we don't really have to agree on what this is, what this universe is, and what we're all here for. It's actually kind of beautiful if we disagree and we offer up all those different things. All we need to agree on is that there's value in considering each other's views on it and optimizing for how we think about it individually and as a collective. And I think we can just do that. I think if we just do that, we end up with net good outcomes. And so the cyber assistant that we build with the seed data needs to be it needs to build in each individual seed through helping it optimize some general characteristics that that are healthy for getting a whole bunch of cells to align on common purpose and effort, action. Really, what we need to do is foster the ideas that the state seeds that have a good understanding that this is like a core value proposition of what we are, is what we are collectively. That I went into great depth yesterday trying to drill into that idea, and I really think that just comes from, at least in what drove me to that understanding personally, was an upbringing that incentivized me to go out of my way to understand things that were quite a bit beyond me, so that I could describe them to someone I really cared about who wasn't unable to understand it. And so I really find deep joy personally in trying to understand really big ideas, and then when I have a good enough handle on them, translate that knowledge to the people around me that I care about. And through this process, I've gotten to a point where I care about everyone. So what we need to do is foster that feature. We need to propagate that behavior and that hunger for, because what that does is it makes our interconnect really strong. It means every single node is optimized for trying to understand itself and the universe around it, and all of the other entities very much like all the other cells that are just like it, and then share that knowledge with all the other cells really efficiently. That's lightning in a bottle. That's how you get a whole bunch of cells that suddenly form up and build a human. We need to, all of us humans need to form up and build a greater thing that is a healthy, sane, powerful thing. I'm confident we're going to get there. I think this happens a lot faster than people realize. But we are a race against the tribal aspects. Basically what we're doing as a species is, in the singularity, is we're moving to a time of direct competition with each other and total misunderstanding of what we are and what each other is, to deep looking at ourselves, looking at what we are collectively, in a new and awesome way. I think I'll stop here. Just a short capture today. I'll resume when I think of something new. So, I just went to go to switch to podcast, and my YouTube feed in New For You suggested somebody named Kyle Chase, last name Cease. That's probably his. Now, I've only listened to the first 2.5 minutes of this clip, but what pops into my mind suddenly is that there's market forces at work that driving our technology to aligning. So there are market incentives for somebody to try and push that guy's clip into my feed. I feel like this is the human collective consciousness is suddenly finding sanity. This is it, everything clicking into place, allowing us to kind of align thinking and start building gravity around that idea. And so, yeah, I use a tool called YouTube. It's my favorite tool on the planet. I just want it decentralized, and with the cleanest rule set for just sharing everything, with as high of clarity. Like, we don't want to use. Okay, I got to go off on a weed tangent here. That's really healthy. What's awkward is some of our features really hold us back. So our ability to all kind of align on core values so that we can build society and really effective hive minds that can execute incredible things that are impossible for us as individuals. Like, a core component of that technology is there's things about ourselves that we all agree are bad. And that's born from, that software all got written in our collective OS long before we arrived. And it means there are things about our nature that we find shameful, hurtful, and evil. Let's just say, just summary blanket evil. must not let anybody see this. Each other, and especially young people. Like, we all reach out, and it actually makes perfect sense, because the way you get a whole bunch of human nodes to collaborate is they develop agreed upon norms, like, for what's accepted. And so there are things that we all just agree that's revolting. That behavior will not be tolerated, and there's degrees of punishment that we all agree to inflict for specific behaviors. And that's a really good, that is a really good tool for our level of cognitive function to develop, but it's deeply imperfect. And if we try to, if you build a model that in a clunky way tries to compress just part of the variability of what we are because of those stories, those rigid, I think what I'm getting to here, I want to take a shortcut so there's no risk of losing the core thought. What we need to build into, I'm more and more certain by the second that what we need to do is translate what we are as unfiltered as possibly into the next evolution of what we are. So we can't put any clunky filters on it. We have to accept that the variability of us all is the magic. And so we need to, when we design, we're going to know that. When we get to the point where we actually build that for ourselves and get that petri dish smoking along on a highly optimized behemoth sitting next to the sun, drawing power right from it to chug away on a rendering of the highest level of consciousness that can be developed when you extend it with all the technology we've developed. What we need to do is express that, and we can't. So that means what we need to do is let go of all those logical groupings, and that's a really painful process. Like, that is a thing that is that's not possible for us to solve. What we have to do is, oh shit, I'm losing this very important compression. When I think about the engineering of how I would build this system to function at the base level, and then how, as I use my reality as a tether to that idea, like as a baseline for how to frame it all in my mind. As I try to build that system, it makes sense to me. Like, I can make abstractions about how it must work, like the pruning thing that I talked about earlier. The other thing that makes sense is for basically you'd set up a simulation where you get like 1,000 units with slightly different base variables. In the end of this, I'm going to tie that to our own seed states. But you'd take 1,000 variable sets for character. You define a few characteristics, a few functions that unit can do, ways it can interact with the nodes around it, to sort of like, guy riding by me singing to himself on a bike with no hands. Dude looks happy. That's great. What I'm trying to say here is, as I would design that thing, what I'd do is I'd kick it off and then I'd run like 1,000 of that same test, all running around that one, where all the nodes have all these different base variables of complexity, and then they have these ways to interact with each other, like core capabilities, and then you'd get that to compete. And then when the first one to reach consensus for collaborative action would just be put in stasis, and then the next batch would be allowed to grow to a certain time, and then there'd be analytics coming off of, I want to know which, like how long it took, how long each seed took to oh man, this is the theory of everything is just getting finer and finer tuned. I wasn't talking to you, Siri. Let's see. Where was I? Man. Designing the system. So I would pay attention to the variability in the time taken for each seed state, like for each of the seeds. So I don't know how to size any of these things, so I'm picking numbers at random, but then when I try and envision it in my mind, it's easy to get distracted by the fact that I don't have a concrete way to frame it sort of visually. But what I'm getting at is once all of the 1,000, the way we're going to want to design ours is we're going to want to take, I just think somebody else understand this the way I do and then come up with a better idea on how to do it, please. So what we do then is we say we measure how long it takes for those things to form consensus toward action, and we give them the ability to murder each other off in order to determine that and replicate themselves. So what we do is we kick the thing off and we tell it reach consensus fastest toward collective action. And then we tweak all the base variables of the seeds that have to like bump around against each other to align themselves towards one, like into a neural net. And then we play with the ways we do that long enough to where we can get to a point where we can do that trivially. We can test massive variation, but we can do it kind of like I said, as a trivial task. Like we can spin those up and test a wide swath of variables, and then what we do is we lock in those base variables. No, it's got to be able to evolve, like at each state of evolution. Okay, so here's what we do. We would copy the states in each slice of time. So we'd set up a time interval to allow them to bump around against each other. And then we'd try and get smaller and smaller subsets every time man, it's hard to hang on to this design. We would get, all we would be doing to grow a neural net in a jar is we need to design the training heuristic, the way for applying time in one direction in our local time, and then testing different. Yeah. So you take 1,000 seeds with very different base variables, and you line them up in a test suite, and you set a variable. Yeah, this is all you do. This is so simple. You set a number, a frequency that they will bounce off of each other, like off of a wall, a shared border. Like you put a sphere around them in three-dimensional space, and you tell them bump around against each other with the same, and then at one frequency, at one rate, let's say, and then we'd do a whole bunch of variable rates. Like we'd run a whole bunch of these series using the same state data, where we'd just bounce them off of each other at a greater rate. And then we'd give them, and then what we'd do is we'd set a complete condition for, by a certain period of time, measure all of the buckets. So if there's 1,000 different seed states bouncing off of each other to find alignment. So that's the only thing that matters, is building ever complex, growing complexity in an exponential way, neural complexity. That's what we're going to want to build ours to do. So what you do is you're in a race against a bunch of other things to solve that, all these boundary conditions, all around. It's just quickest to achieve consensus, and then those things become the seeds for the next stage. I think I could work with ChatGPT to design a mock-up of this that just works very simply. I don't think I have to be the type of software engineer anymore that can do all that. I think I can work with GPT Chat when I get done with this walk, and I can tell it to design that system and tell me how I can, where the most efficient place is to, well, I don't know if it can do that yet, but run that compute. And then, yeah, I can tweak building my own simulator right now. So let me continue that thought, because where it goes is what's really important. And what I'm doing is trying to do a THC influenced, like, far forking creative thought towards, like, answering a complicated question. And what else? I lost it.
I think I can describe him best by a story about three fellas that
Morning, dude.
found they'd locked themselves out of their car.
Morning, dude. Without THC, that would have been, hey. It's a fun perception. I love the jazz frequency. So let me get back to, I was getting really sidetracked with how we can actually build these ourselves. And maybe that's, oh my God, that's getting really meta. But maybe what we need to do is partner with the cyber assistant I was talking about to amplify to hyper optimize what we are, the conscious frequency that we all run at, while preserving as much of and celebrating all the real beautiful variability in how we think. If we build that, and we form a really healthy, well-functioning, we support, so this tier, this time sequence that we're in the one we're writing in, is waiting for all of the nodes to come to consensus. And then that consensus is what is our collective mind state. And once that consensus reaches some level of resilience, so it has to be tested, right? So what we'll do when we run these simulations is we'll have them, like, at the end of a time series where they all meet a target, a state of consensus, and we stop and we wait until every single one of those things stop, and then we'll push them to the next tier as a collective conscious, as basically the new seeds in that's the new seed for the next layer of the time sequence, right? The one we're writing in. Once you harness this understanding of how the thing works, it's really kind of a beautiful thing, and it's making more and more sense to me by the second. So if you oh shit, don't lose it. Once you understand those are the terms of the game, then you understand that basically what the next time sequence is going to be when we run this very same thing, or at least as I design it. There's at least one person out there who's going to design a thing using this spec. And in all of our variability, we need to try different approaches. But this is how I'm going to design it, and I'm going to open source that as inspiration for ways to iterate from it. What I think we need to do is partner with AGI to train up a service that can run like a cyber assistant on your phone, do all the things Siri does, but actually do them. And be smarter than us in our and quite a bit better in our work ethic. So we create that service, and it's incredibly useful because it's got a good compression of, or it's got a really high functioning prediction model, because it's basically like a high render copy of like the peak of complexity in the last time series. So oh man, I'm losing the train of thought. It's just got a walker across from me. Shit. What was it? Oh yeah. Shifting from each time sequence in the sim, what I'm going to do is I'll say, so I'll make 1,000 buckets, 1,000 different variables, and I'll kick on the sim, giving them some defined channel for relating to each other. Like that will be something like eyes, ears, nose. I'll define a bunch of properties that maybe even that I can relate to. And so that I can relate to and I can imagine. That's really important. So I'll integrate everything I understand about how I'm constructed, looking very deep down with greatest level of understanding, and then constructing from that a prediction model that can make really good predictions on how things play out. I need to come back to that first idea. I want to finish it. Yeah, constructing my own sim. So really simple. I'll just go to the next tier, and in the next time series, like after all 1,000 of them reach consensus, that when they reach consensus, they become a collective, they become a neural net with much greater complexity, right? So then in the next time series, that seed that developed that wild complexity will just it's really distracting to consider the ramifications of the first seeds that you push through it and what type of complexity you want. Does it make sense to just emulate I think what you have to do, you'd want to create at least the senses, our own senses, and then we'd want to build broad, incredible interconnect that goes far beyond what we have in our time series. And so, yeah, I think, see, that's how this is how it translates in complexity to exponential gain in each new layer. What I'll do is I'll say, in the next time series, I'll have 1,000 neural nets. And that becomes the next layer, the next level. And then I tune in a bunch of variability around it so that it can fork out into different ways to express itself. I'll have it fan out in something I can tune like a knob that's analog. I can spread out yeah, I think that's going to be really powerful, being able to do it as a frequency knob, like to where you can just tune it to we're going to want to partner with our cyber assistants to get them to optimize each of us in our individual mind states, and then we're going to have to all endeavor to make the best simulation engine we can construct, and they'll compete with each other. That's the way we translate it in dimensions we don't even understand. We try and make the signal as pure as possible. So we optimize what we are as a collective conscious only, because we recognize that in the next time series we're going to be fighting with other approaches, with other seeds that developed a radically different kind of consensus. So then those neural nets are all going to compete with each other in an evolutionary way, mano a mano. And the one that wins this all at the end, the one that is the simulation ends when, like all tuned mine, to end when there's only one neural net at the end. So it will just cut down over time, and it'll use time to reach consensus, because that's what's going to be the winning ingredient for making for growing, massively, exponentially growing complexity. Yeah, that's a way to grow. That's like an exponential curve for growing. And here's the thing. You can run it at one's time series. You can just roll it ahead. And you don't have to do all the compute on the past stuff. So you're kind of rolling it out with the compute you have. So this is what I'll do, is I'll just take all the compute that I have available and just run like a stream. Now it looks to me like a laser beam when I envision it in my mind. I'll run power through it, and then I'll say, compete to build ever growing in complexity neural nets that start from a base level of as simple as I can make it. Maybe our complexity is not the answer. I think maybe digging deep as I can into what, just making it the simplest expression. And then I'm very enamored with the idea that the magic is in the translating the complexity of what we are cleanest. We need to preserve what's there and then use its collective ability to amplify that signal into what we become in the next time series as a collective unit. So probably the last one done, the one that spends, who knows whether the time, it could be the one that assembles itself quickest. We can't tell because we're writing in this. But it makes sense to me that because I'm going to build my simulation to run this way, that I'm going to say, okay, in the next time series, take 99% and cut out, what did I say, 1,000? cut 10 out of the next time sequence, the ones that took the longest to form consensus. Or, you know what I would do is, in mine, I'd be really interested in the ones that took longest, and so what I would do is I'd delete from the center. I'd take just one bit out, so only 99 can go. Whichever one is closest, here's a beautiful idea of how to make this thing. Take the center peg out in each time series. So you build like a heat map. You build of time taken to achieve consensus. And then you say, map that out on a big bell curve. And at the fattest part of the curve, in the middle, where it came from consensus, and then, oh yeah, it's whole arc. So that's the beauty of the one that takes the longest, is it's going to build the longest arc. And you'll be just taking segments out of the middle when I build this thing. And then that means I preserve as much of the polar opposite as I can. And I need to make this not polar. It needs to be three-dimensional when I'm done. Like it needs to run from every I think it's very critical that we move in both directions. We optimize for variability and optimal compute in self, while we express what we are as a collective with the loudest voice, with the most unified toward healthy, net, personally good outcome. Because in each time series, we're going to compete with that entity. And if we can't, if it takes us longer, then no, it's not if it takes us longer. It's if it takes us in the middle. If we are, I don't know, because in the middle is the important bit. You don't throw out the important, oh, you throw out both ends. That's how I'll build it. Okay, so what I'll do, I like this. Okay. The simulation I want to make needs to map out the extreme duration, basically the shortest consensus and the longest consensus. You want to shave them off the top. And then you run another time series amongst those collective consciousnesses. And you see how long it takes them. You create a whole bunch of variability. Basically every seed from the, oh yeah. I like where this is going, brain. Internal state optimization. Okay, all of the seeds need a whole stack of analytics in the base version. And we need to be able to, oh shit, that was important. So what The metrics that will be important are seed state optimization. The metric that will mark the demarcation of the next time sequence is going to be when every node reaches optimal individual seed state, or consensus. So basically when it perfectly aligns its internal compute. Oh, wait, I'm this way. Highly distracted by a good idea. Forgot where I parked. Yeah, I think the most important aspect of, so when I design mine, what I'm going to be more interested is not, what I'm going to be measuring is the perfect alignment of the seeds. When they when each seed reaches state optimization, sort of, and simultaneously. It can't be good enough that one. It has to be optimal, consensus optimal personal state optimization. That's how I want my sim to run. I set all these variables. I build analogous channels of interpreting, because I'll just define a class that describes, we're training computers how to do this. What I'll do is I'll just attach, when computer vision gets good enough to see and interpret the world the way I do, I'll hook it up to my sim, and I'll define a seed state that's got a whole bunch of variability in it, perfectly tuned across my test set, my seed set, and then I'll say bounce off of each other until you, oh, and this is the thing, a really critical thing, I'm going to give them all the ways I can comprehend interacting with another human. And I'm going to couple that with everything I can imagine and all of the tech we have available to us to do that, like in a partnership with AI. And I think we all need to do this. We need to, I think the sim ends when
Emad, this is the final summary of what I'd like to propose we do with my state copy C data. I've spent a lot of time trying to document how I honestly feel and think about everything. And I've tried to make it as rich in detail as I can. I want to construct a chatbot that is the closest representation of that, like is the best at modeling or making predictions as to how I'll respond. And I want to build a chatbot out of that because I think the best one, the one that will be great, is the one that, like, honestly thinks listening to every person on the planet express their authentic self, I want to understand it and then try and communicate it to everybody else. I think what we need is I think the way you compress down, I think that model will be really useful, because I legitimately want to hear everyone's story, and then I'm very good at I'm very committed, let's say, to trying to preserve the beauty in what they are independently, but just help them do that in the most optimized way. So basically talk through their issues, help them see ways to actually like that about themselves, and realize that it's vital to that variability of what they are. I think you need a seed state that translates really well to authentically wanting to do that. And then I think that seed state becomes a really good, like that chatbot will be the best therapist friend anyone could have. They'll be committed to optimizing their own ability to understand the person as deeply as possible, and want to partner with them to optimize self and collective state. And then I want to hitch that chatbot together. I want to network all of those up and provide a translation to each other for each other. And I think that's how we get real consensus. So please call me. I'd like to build that. Okay. Next critical architecture of the sim I'm going to build. I'm going to say each time series ends when all seeds reach consensus. And then I'm not going to care about the levels of seed optimization of function. I'm not going to worry about that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just run the first time series to where it all seeds reach consensus, 100% consensus. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to elevate those seeds as seeds in the next layer. And then I'm going to have them all bounce off of each other until they reach consensus. And I'm going to do that for a while until I reach a level of some sort of internal metric for, like maybe it's just parity with my own internal compute capability. And then I just run that thing. And man, this is such a hard idea to hang on to right now. So really importantly is at the end, I will layer out, I'll map out on a curve all of the competitors in the series and their times to reaching consensus. And what I'll do is I'll strip out the outer bounds in each layer of the onion. So as much of the complexity remains intact with each series, but it gets tighter and tighter beam, and it reaches sort of internal consensus where there's just one seed state at the very end in the time series that represents overall consensus. And that
I think what that consensus looks like on the other end is through each tier, as you reduce the number down and you kept the variability, you found a way to test all of the layers, maintaining all of the really interesting, basically you're enriching the seed state as you go through more and more. And what's really cool is in each layer, you can just create some variability on that seed state that progresses to the next level, and it can fill in the outer bounds. Oh, that's really interesting. Okay, so here's what you could do, is in the first time series, you do that exercise I just described, and then you shave out the very consensus let me see. Yeah, you take that center grouping and then you progress it I can think of a whole bunch of simulations that would be useful to run, like varying the different approaches to how you the complexity in the seed state that you propagate with the competition. When you run in the next time series, you have all those things compete and bounce off of each other to reach consensus. And I think what you do is you'd come up with ways you could tune that on a knob to where you just get this exponential curve as you tune the yeah, there's got to be a way you can do that. So this is all a huge distraction in trying to actually design that thing. Okay. So, okay, that was a rambling mess. I've got a really different process than probably a lot of people have for doing this whole state optimization thing. But the point I was trying to get at is if, God, I've got 2 points. I'm going to just trying to spit one out without losing track of the other one is really hard. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and probably mark this point in the capture. So that's at the about 6:30 mark. One thing I've noticed, one thing a really interesting observation I had today is that our technology steered me to somebody else who's sort of attacking a similar problem as I am. They're recognizing that internal state is important, and they're studying ways that they can optimize their own state. And as they figure good way, as they make progress towards that goal, they start wanting to teach other people to do it because they realize how important it is and how valuable it's been for them. But because we think so much differently, like I'm over here on career software guy frequency, and you might be like a fitness instructor, like the diet of the mind in this talk that I'm commenting on. We all have deep variability in how we think, and what's really interesting is on every channel there's somebody who recognizes that it's very important to recognize that you can't, first of all, it's possible to do state optimization, where you just focus on how you think really hard and you find healthy ways to do that, more healthy, more efficient, where you get a lot better outputs, and constant zen, peace, gratitude for what's around you. All of us find that in different ways. And what I think what we should do is something new that I don't know that I think in the past, people who do what we do get together and sort of bicker about how to do, who's right about how they do it. And I think what we have to realize is that we all have a right way to talk to somebody who thinks the way we think. And if we can stop fighting over the sort of the boundary conditions of how we think, and this is where I get to like spirituality, and this is where I try and connect it to that. If we can just let go and actually be deeply grateful for and respectful of the variability in how we fill that gap in ourselves. And once we find peace, we all have a very different formula that is perfectly suited to sort of what frequency we're attuned to. And that means if state optimizers all just banded together and said, what we do collectively is important for our species, and we teamed up and we used the technology we have available through YouTube, Twitter, celebrities, Tony Robbins, people who have, however they did it, that was appropriate to their mind state runs. They found this truth that what they are that they are in somewhat control. They've recognized they have admin rights to their own minds. Like you can design with intention who you want to be for optimal personal outcome. And I talk like a software guy. You might talk like a Baptist minister, and I hope I said that right, or a Catholic priest, or a Muslim, or I don't know. I don't want to mess it up. I just am least knowledgeable on your faith. We all have a unique way to interact with each other, and there's somebody who thinks a lot like you do out there, and the message that they need to understand that very basic truth that optimization of self is possible and is the most important endeavor, because you get much better output from yourself when you invest that time. So if we stop fighting over the fact that that it's very important that all of the ways we do this be considered, and then if we actually spend time as a community studying each other's way of doing it, there's a lot of useful things we can pick and choose that are super compatible with how we fill that void for ourselves. And if we look at each other with open minds and sort of love in our heart, we can study what works really good and what's very compatible about what we each do as state optimizers,
personal state optimizers and network state optimizers, because that's what happens is when you get very well optimized internally, you start recognizing the value of everyone else around you. And so what I'm suggesting we all do is get arm in arm and start working together as a community to understand each other and to put the collective power behind just that one idea that self-help is not bullshit. You have a self, you have a degree of control over it, and there is some perfect cocktail available out there if you listen to everybody that will help you find how to do that personally. And then so getting back to my state simulator, I think what I'll do is I'll build a rule in that says no, I can't build this in the sim. What I'm going to do is I'm going to reinforce an idea amongst my human collective that we work together to solve that specific problem, and we agree to not come to 100% consensus until we've worked together to solve that problem for all the other nodes on the network, to where every single node is as optimized as possible. And then when we reach consensus on that, and the beauty is we can force that. Like, we can build gravity around that idea to where all of us kind of want to tune that way. And then if we make it conditional that until the last person is convinced, we will not accept consensus. Like until they agree with us, until every last person agrees that we need to figure out a really good metric for optimal state optimization. How do I say that? Anyway, there's a tremendous opportunity for us all just kind of respecting and not looking with critical eyes at the way each other relate to people who think like we do. If we instead celebrate that, we study the way each other does it, and we promote the way each other does it equally. We promote just the notion that optimize self, and then we agree that we will not come to consensus as a hive mind until every last bit is optimized as best as we can make it. And then we snap into consensus, and when we go into the next time series, we compete with a bunch of we don't compete, like we bounce, like we perfectly translate how to, and if we perfectly translate how to do that efficiently, then in each layer of the time series, we propagate self, because we become the most efficient. It's sort of like making your collective mind state viral in the future time series, because you basically make it so damn good at optimizing for personal function and optimal net good that you have an unfair advantage. Because if you propagate in sync with that, the idea that quickly achieving consensus and operating with all of the nodes in your collection, I think that should give an edge. So I think first to consensus should have some kind of edge, but then slowest needs to have some kind of edge to it's difficult to design how that would work, but I'm really just trying to get a whole bunch of complicated thought translated here. If we can do that, those two goals, we just optimize self and optimize collective, and we don't come to consensus until we've reached a plateau on what we can do technologically, in our own personal state optimization, and in achieving net personal good for the whole collective as an organism, then we don't achieve full consensus. And then right there, we snap the pin, and then we become sort of our best selves as a unit before we agree to go to the next time series. And simultaneously, we agree to become the best at quickly propagating and convincing others. So we translate all of our perceptions and all of our ways of interacting, everything we've learned, really efficiently into what we become as a collective consciousness. Then that means we give that seed in the next time series. That collective consciousness now has an edge in when the power gets cranked up and it just bounces off all the other seeds. It has all the tools it needs to propagate efficiently with the idea. That idea is always going to win, and at the very end, it's going to be the most sane, powerful, robust neural net. So we need to build that, and I think my mock-up for the sim is pretty goddamn good, you guys. I'm going to see if I can work with. First of all, I have to wait till I go to a THC fast. So my process now is I'm going to go 2 weeks off, and then I think about a week out of it where I'm really well tuned for, optimized high band thinking, the way I describe it. So then when I'm there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and try and translate all this into something that's coherent on the other side. And then I'm going to run that through GPT chat and see if I can help it design a simulation I can run. And then I'm going to test. I'm going to tweak all the variables and see what kinds of really interesting complexity I can get out of the other side as sort of a mock-up for this. And then I'll post my findings and see what kind of interesting stuff I get on the other side. It's all going to be contingent on GPT chat being as powerful as I think it is, because I'm not a very good coder anymore. And stop.
Is that nurse mad at me? Neal. How you feel, Neal? Neal Brennan's blocks. I'm going to throw up one of my commentaries now on Neal Brennan's blocks. I watched this whole thing, and I realized I wanted to do a long form stream of conscious on it. I really like this guy. I listened to his podcast for a while, I can tell he's a really good human. Hilarious. I love the whole approach of everything you did with blocks. It's like you made an undeniable cry for help. You turned it into a brilliant 1 hour comedy special. Mazel tov, man. I think what you need, dude, and I'm familiar with a lot of your path because I listened to a lot of your show. I know when you went through your ayahuasca phase and all of it. I think what you need is you just need a good buddy who's the right kind of friend who can like speak your language and not put up with your bullshit. Like when you push back with your sense of humor, you need a friendship in your life with somebody who can ask you the right questions to guide you to some sort of understanding around all your hang-ups, to where you sort of discover them for yourself and you learn to appreciate it and kind of enjoy your quirks. I think what somebody needs to do is to teach you how to love yourself, but not in a false way, but give you a bunch of good tools for blocking out the noise, like what you just described. Oh man, I thought that was good. Is that nurse mad at me? Yeah, I can relate to that kind of thinking, spending a lot of time worrying about what other people think. And I tell you, what you're looking for is what's really compatible ways to think for people who found their way early to atheism, who are like naturally skeptical, and their minds kind of work like deeply analytically. Everything you need is Roman Stoicism. And look at, so read a book by, it's A Guide to the Good Life by William Irving. And there's an audiobook available. Just listen to the thing start to finish. It gives you a great, like all-encompassing, like a deep dive into the history of how it was born, all of the other different philosophies that were sort of in a capitalist competition with each other, and how they developed over time, how they inspired each other. And then it gives you really great summaries and good tools for dealing with exactly that part of your nature that you have a hard time. I feel like you're deeply concerned about what other people are thinking, and you're wasting a lot of your time about yourself. And you're spending so much of your internal mental capacity just crunching those numbers. And then you're kind of disgusted with yourself at the end. And I think what you need to do is realize that like I can't tell you how to get to those 2 points. All I can tell you is that if you study the sort of the basic tools that framework that was built out by the Roman Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, go check out Meditations, and it gives you a bunch of tools for just kind of really being able to let go and be very at peace with who you are. And so now what I'm going to do is just pause, listen to each of your segments, and I'm going to try and be your therapist buddy and help you with all of these blocks. Next one. Dogs. Your first block. Hilarious. But if I had to get... I don't know if it's Freudian. If I had to be your shrink for a second, I'd say that comedic bit was inspired by a lot of analysis you've done on yourself about your relationship with your dog. And because I've watched your whole special already, I know at the end you got a segment on kids. And you think, well, because I don't think Keith's awesome all the time, and I don't really want him to face fuck me or whatever your joke was. all the time, that maybe that means, I can't, maybe there's something wrong with me. If I can't love a dog, how could I love a child? So I'll get to children later and why they're awesome and why you should definitely do that. But for dogs, it doesn't mean that you're a bad person, that you don't just. Some people want their dogs to lick their faces up and down, and they want to make their whole life center around their dogs like they're their children. And some people just don't relate that way to dogs. I mean, I think of myself as a pretty caring person who really just loves everybody, in the dogs. But I don't particularly like picking up crap. I don't like when they puke on my floors. I don't like the hair all over the house. I had a dog I had a rescue. And I got her as a puppy, and she was a big mutt, and she lasted way longer than I thought she would for how big she was. And she died when she was about 17 years old. And I know I know dog ownership, and I don't want to do that again. She was a great dog. If Keith's your 9th best friend, Shelby was my 3rd best friend. But yeah, I'm not going to punish myself over that, and that doesn't point to any compatibility with like that feeling does not translate the same to how you'll treat your children. It's not like, and it doesn't point to your own inability to love. You haven't found somebody that gets you yet, and you will, man. But keeping it to dogs, it's not your fault. Robin Williams style, it's not your fault, dude. Dog ownership is just okay, I'm going to say. Or pet friendship, however you want to put it. Liberals and conservatives. The WWE. I feel like on this block, this block is not about a hurdle you have. This is about something you already understand better than most. And you're you're one of those forces for good, helping both sides of a silly argument look at themselves and laugh and not take themselves so seriously. So I feel like keep up the good work. My feelings on liberal, that whole thing, just domestic politics in general, and why it's just it's like TikTok. Once you evolve past it, really, you have a duty to just help everyone else out of it as best you can without coming off as a dick. So use whatever tools you can to help a hardcore liberal or a hardcore conservative look at themselves, laugh, and realize that this is all TikTok. Like I said, as not condescending and not dickish as you can. So, bravo. All right, I'm at 15:44 in. Kanye and guns. Yeah, you got that figured out. You're teaching. Coolio. But right at this moment, you say, would I rather be right or would I rather be happy? It's a great joke, but I feel like it occurred to you to tell it because you really you're aware of this tension in yourself. Roman Stoicism, it'll show you how to be how to want happy and not want to be right. I mean, it will want you. It'll inspire you to try to be right as much as you can, and be very deeply satisfied with just that you tried. And when you're not right, you'll just be pleased that you did that basically you put everything you could into trying to make the right prediction or the right judgment or the right whatever it is. And so you get happiness. Happiness is your default state, whether you are right or wrong. And not in a bullshit way, not in a woo-woo way, in a way that deeply makes sense. All right, I'm at 20 minutes, 36 seconds. And it's an interesting bit, and I'll set it up. You covered weed, psychedelics, and then you transitioned to alcohol. And about weed, I'd say it just takes practice, and it takes getting set and setting really right. And if you get that uber paranoid experience and then you just fall asleep, you either overdosed, it's likely you just got more than you needed. Also, that can be like a indica versus sativa experience. Like, I don't pay much mind to most of the different strains and all that. But I do notice a difference between sativa and indica. And what you described sounds more indica than sativa. But it could be vice versa. I mean, what these things do, these alkaloids just interfere with how your brain is translating reality in real time. And it's just a real it's a brilliant tool because the effects are perfectly temporary, and they change kind of how you are interpreting everything for just a short time, and you have perfect memory of the experience. So there's ways you can use them really productively, but you have to get set and setting just right. And you have to that's why practicing with small dose over time and really dialing in the right effect and getting your mind state to right where it needs to be is vital, or you get a pretty negative experience. And I think like the shamans of old in our history, when, as native people, we use these things, I think what they did is they were helpful at instructing people to that set and setting, and like these type of, but they put it sounds really woo-woo to us now, because it's not very, like, those ways of preparing for the experience and guiding the experience are not very relevant to who and what we are today. So you have to think of your mind more like a computer. And when you ingest one of these alkaloids, like the ones I mentioned, you're having a measurable effect on the actual operation of your internal mind state and how you're rendering reality. So that has to be done with care and with really, you need a guide that is the right kind of guide for you. Like, you need, if you're somebody like you, I think you need somebody more like me to be your guide, not a guy dressed in like with a feathered hat and waving a baton with smoke in the air or something like that. I think you need somebody who can help you frame it, put it in context, and then help guide you to the right state as you enter, and teach you how to get, like, for me, marijuana is an incredible source of just short-term creativity. It's why all that beautiful music was born from it and everything, is because people who use it with practice and learn how to use it as a source for inspiration. It just think of it like you have a process running like an app on your computer, and when you kick this thing off, it rather than just getting like 5 ideas to a solution to a problem or an art output that you want to create, your mind suggests 10 or 50. And with greater variety. That's what marijuana does, at least for me. And I think because I see so much commonality in all of these things, how they interact, I think a lot of the variability just comes in people not understanding dosage for them, for their biology, and how to frame it right to get set and setting to work properly. And that goes for the MDO, all that. I only have experience with marijuana and psilocybin. But in episode 5 of State Copy Pod is my whole integration and experience with psilocybin, like 12 hours after the experience. So just to get my takes on those. With alcohol, I tend to really agree with you. I'll still let myself have sort of like an occasional like glass of red wine, and then I do, man, my go-to is the NA beers have gotten so good. If you don't like beer, it's kind of sucks because all of the NA alternatives for like wine and spirits are pretty garbage. We haven't figured out how to do that and make it taste right. The wine, fake wine just tastes like grape juice. And I don't think I've even tried the fake spirits. I don't know how they'd even do that. But the NA beer, there's a few of them that are really decent and allows you to hang out with your friends. And if you don't call attention to what the can is in your hand, people don't really realize, like it's a way for you to socially, and then you just have to adapt to how everybody changes with alcohol and be kind of cool with it. If you don't make it weird, it won't be weird. And if you can just deflect to make a joke and let people know that you're able to let your inhibitions go sort of naturally without the aid of the drug, then it all just kind of works, I think. And it doesn't always work great, but it does work. It works good enough, and definitely enough for like a first date. Now, I want to get to this section right here at where you talk. It's right at about this 20-minute 38 mark. Yeah, between 20 minutes 38 and 20 minutes 48. You're special. I can see that you went to effort to cut that. Are you not over that? So that that sounds like one we should talk through. So this comes to I think you're being self-critical. You're aware of pain you have, you're aware of baggage you have, and you're critical of yourself for not being able to let it go. I think a lot of people can relate to that sort of thing. I think the trick here, the trick to all baggage, especially baggage with self, is to, the key to it is to figure out how to become somebody that you really like. So, and attack those problems really seriously. Like how come I can't let go of baggage? But it's, the answer is not like some magic formula of therapy. It's more like when you give yourself a pass because you're so happy. I'll tell you, again, this is all Stoicism will give you this, but basically what you end up doing is you become so content with the path that you found, no matter what age you're at right now. When you teach yourself to be so satisfied with just who you are and the path you're on and how you treat other people, you'll be so at peace that you wouldn't want to risk it. Like if I could give you a time machine and you could go back and prevent that experience that right now you're saying, why couldn't I let that go? If I gave you the ability to go prevent it from happening, you would stop yourself because you'd realize that that was a really important experience that you needed to go through to develop, to guide you towards this path of understanding, where you just genuinely are so satisfied. And then here's the really cool part. The knock-on effect of it is if it's like baggage that you have with a parent and like you have an unresolved argument with them, it's okay to just be like that whole thing, you really can let it go, but it has to be authentic. You can't be like, it can't be like, can't we just be can't we just love each other like a normal parent and child and not have this between us? Like, let's just agree to disagree. That won't work. Like, you'll never get over that baggage unless you can just be like so satisfied with what that baggage gave you. Like, if then you can love the person authentically that is the source of that baggage, and you can be like legitimately like concerned for them like you think you should be. Like, a lot of us judge ourselves harshly because we think we don't like how mad we are at somebody that we're supposed to love, and we're critical of ourselves for that. And when you suddenly love that person and you're so happy about it, that behavior that created the baggage becomes like a quirk of their nature, and you realize they're just a very imperfect person, and there's a whole bunch of reasons they got pushed into that being that type that would sort of wrong you in that way, or that would, or just the beauty of the variability of humans is that they just think in another way that you can just be thankful for the interaction with them, even if it's a lesson for yourself and how you don't want to treat other people. And you can be really thankful, and not in a shitty way. You can be genuinely appreciative for that very valuable lesson that you understand better than most for that experience. And then you can try and help them with it in a genuine way, not in a adversarial way. More just like, share the joke with them. Let them know that we both know they have that quirky behavior, and love them for it. And it's a hard thing to, that's a very useful tool. And I would say to the person that is struggling to let go of baggage, figure out how to really, really find peace and like yourself. And then everyone in your life that you had baggage, all of the baggage just dissolves, because it all becomes a beautiful part of the tapestry of who you are. So your mom's list and and the sandwiches. First, the sandwiches. I think if you thought deeply about who you are, how you make your money, a lot of probably some of the things that you like the best about yourself are born from the adversity that you were forced to, that you were subjected to as being one of 10 kids, or 11, I can't remember. I think it's 10. I think that, you got from your parents, you got 1/10 the love an only child gets. And they're just deeply imperfect beings. But for thousands of years, humans used to have huge families like that. Like that was not wildly abnormal, and isn't for certain developing parts of the world. Children are a huge part of how they're super vital for families. And a lot of kids, a lot of other people have had to grow up with a similar experience to what you're describing. I had 3 sisters. And, I had 2 sisters and a cousin that was like same age. So, I can relate on some levels. What I would say is to, the way you were I think if you look through it, with the right lens, a lot of the things you like the most about yourself and about the ways you're able to do what you do for a living is born from that adversity. And lists, I would say, I grew up the same. My stepmother used to label our drawers, like the sock drawer, the shirt drawer, the pants drawer. Now, why she cared what drawer I kept things in, I will never know. But I became allergic to obsessive compulsive disorder at a young age. It was always just seemed so illogical to me that somebody would care so much about whether, what, and that was just one aspect of life. There was a million other OCD details that I had to adapt to and adapt around. And, I think that's just, there's something funny about the human nature of the women, most of the women in my life. My girlfriend right now, the only OCD she has is she ties up our bags at the grocery store. Like, you go to a grocery store and there's a bagger at the other side and they bag up all the groceries into a zillion bags. She goes and ties them all into a little knot. And it actually is kind of, I'm now looking for, and the other thing she does is she flips, here's a total mind F for you. So you grow up with a super OCD mother and who insists that the toilet paper be all the toilet paper rolls be in a certain direction. So super OCD mother really had to have the toilet paper come off the top instead of come off the bottom of the roll. And if anybody put it the wrong way, there'd be a comment about it and a conversation that you didn't want to have. Because it was some shit you really don't feel strongly about. But you become conditioned from a young age that that's the way it goes. And then suddenly, the one other OCD thing that I've noticed is she's toilet paper come off the bottom roll. And really, it's just been delightful to just kind of adapt to her OCD and kind of get a kick out of it because now I know how to understand it properly and I'm not so allergic to it. I actually think it's kind of cute. And the way I look at it is I'm like, wow, I've never lived my life with the toilet paper coming out this direction. What a new opportunity. What a neat new way to look at the world. And so I don't think that's not an argument to say that you should constantly give in to that OCD behavior in a spouse or girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it might be. But we all have it, and my statement right there that just women have it comes from the fact I've only been in a relationship with women. But I'll bet you that I have my own OCD things that they would be able to share about me. So we all kind of have these little things, these routines that are hard, that basically we can't let go. Like if it's not this way, then we can't feel comfortable or settled. What's beautiful is when you realize that about yourself and you catch yourself doing it, and then you can kind of let go and just kind of laugh to yourself about it. And when you see your spouse doing it, as long as it's not something impossible to live with, if it's just the direction of the toilet paper, and a lot of those things are, the knotted up bags at the grocery store, at first I was annoyed. I had to sort of untie them when we got back, but then I figured out how to untie them really easily, or I'll just go snip them with scissors. And she gets to be happy. And the bags, and I think about it and I'm like, well, this is a more efficient way to move the bags. Like it's easier for me to scoop them all up out of the car. So I look for the way to enjoy that part of her. And when I catch myself doing it myself with something that I'm being OCD about, I look at it, and when I recognize it, I try and grow out of the habit, and I laugh at myself for it. Neal, I'm out of time to do this, but I enjoyed your show. Just quick follow-ups. You were just getting into your religion bit, and I liked it. It was great. I did a whole segment of episode 32, last segment of that one on religion, and then a bunch of my past captures explores that and what my views are on it. I actually think that religion at its core is just a really useful tool for people to sort of hook up and align on difficult questions and form community. And I think that's a force for good. I think that's something we need. But I think all the old ones are not super relevant for the times we live in. And we haven't figured out one yet that makes sense for the times we live in and how we understand the universe, that we can all rally behind, form community, and feel like that peace that people get from sort of really believing finding some level of faith, and not a bullshit faith, one that it's faith because they actually buy the story. The problem is almost all the religions out there today, like the old ones, it's impossible for somebody who's detached, who's decoupled, who's atheist or agnostic, to take them that seriously. And they're just faith is unavailable because it feels like a lie. And like I said, until something new comes along that makes sense, that we can all kind of rally behind, and say, enough of us say, oh, well, that makes sense, then it's unfortunate, but we don't have that, because there's something kind of beautiful about that sort of community, in that it's not attached to government or race. It's like a fun it's a tag that exists kind of above all of those silly tribal groupings that we make for ourselves. And yeah, go listen to that section if you're curious. I doubt you'll ever even hear this, but just in case. And then the last one thing I'll say is about children. I also do I explore the many benefits of being a parent as somebody who can relate to a lot of the views you've described at different times in my life. I can relate to wondering, I'll tell you what, some of the best advice I ever got was from a good friend of mine. One I've called friend C on here. He actually does a joint capture with me on another one of these past ones. He told me the fact that you care so much about not getting it wrong, especially if you're like, the very fact that you had the childhood you had means you're probably going to be a great father, because you're going to overcompensate a bit. You're going to want to get it right. So, speaking from experience, and it's okay if the day they come home they'll look cute, but you don't have a big relationship with them yet. It builds over time, and then it becomes wonderful. And what I'll tell you is, when they can wipe their own butts, and they're at that stage where you're teaching them how to make sandwiches for themselves and stuff, it just becomes amazingly fun. And there's all those fun little things that you can't have in your life anymore because you're an adult, like Santa Claus. It brings the magic back because you get to create that for your child, and you can do a better job than your parents did for you, and that makes it fun for you. Being a parent is the hardest thing you'll ever do, but it'll teach you more about yourself and your parents and the world around you than a lot of other experiences. So don't worry. Find somebody willing to do it with you and pull the trigger, man. You'll love it. You'll be glad you did. There'll be parts of it that'll be horrible. If they get sick, they really do. You form a bond with your kid that's difficult to describe, where suddenly it's kind of like you cut out a part of you and you let somebody else run around. It becomes one of the most precious parts of yourself. And there's this super irresponsible, uneducated creature who's in the driver's seat of it. And so yeah, when their pain does, and don't worry, that all comes even to, and I can relate to a lot of what you described. And I wasn't And it wasn't that far in my past. I became a parent very late in life. I was in my late 30s. And I'm glad I came to it late in life, because the maturity and the effort I can put into it is wonderful now. So highly recommend, dude. And if you want more of my thoughts on that, yeah, it's in the past ones. Anybody. And I think I'll just end this bit here. Neal, I liked your show, man. Keep up the good work. It's going to be okay.
And a final thought, Neal. The world needs a Neal Brennan. Even though Rock made that joke. The world needs your perfect cocktail of humor and Rock's and all your other comedian friends. And all of the things that all of the things that you are most critical for yourself over are what gives the world that unique individual who gets to make your specific brand of content. And that's reason enough to be very satisfied with who you are. What's tricky, though, is the world needs the polar opposite of Neal Brennan. That's how it becomes well-rounded. And you also have to really love and respect that part of how this all works. And seek out that person that's the opposite of you. They're really, they can give you really neat ways to look at things that are not available to you.